as your career developed, when you actually took up full-time roles now, doing advisory work and taking up leadership in public institutions, what was that like compared to your experience in academia in the private sector?
Yeah, that's interesting, Jerry. At the beginning, let me say, I was teaching at the University of Nairobi, and then I was running an Institute of International Studies, which was offering teaching for diplomats who wanted to study international trade, international politics, African diplomacy, on the side. And this was civil servants at the University of Nairobi doing graduate work, and I was running that and teaching and doing research at the same time. That was not unusual in my days, and we enjoyed it and felt that we were serving the country. Now, when in 2003 we had a change of government, and we felt this is a historic moment for the country. They began recruiting for advisors here in Kenya and internationally to help run the economy and bring it to recovery. The year 2001 was the first one where real per capita in Kenya was negative. People were getting poorer.
This is 2001?
Yeah.
Just before Kibaki came in, yes.
In fact, from about 1980, 82, GDP per capita growth was heading south continuously. So I resigned a tenured professorial appointment at the University of Florida and came to my country, which I loved, and where I felt I could have an input. Got recruited competitively to be an advisor at Treasury for international development policy, and a position funded by the UNDP. There are about 5 or 6 of us. Yeah, and I lasted throughout the Kibaki period. And we worked hard. Our idea was to get the economy recovering, strengthen institutions and capacity building, and get the economy growing at double-digit level, if possible, and do what the Southeast Asian countries have done in a period of 25 to 30 years. You turn the country around from a predominantly agricultural to an industrialized, urbanized country, where young people who need a job can find one. A decent job, not selling tea on the street when you have a bachelor's degree or even a PhD, which is where we are at. Sadly, now. Sadly,
you've mentioned off camera that a lot of the work at that time with the National Economic and Social Council was a think tank style of work. How did that, what was the thinking that was influencing the work that you were doing at that time, even with the development of the Kenya Vision 2030, and how that was shaping government policy?
I've now come to believe in what this institution here is doing, that is getting and training young leaders. Leadership is the most important contributing factor to answering the question you're asking me. President Kibaki believed in thinking through policy issues before you act, and getting the best minds sitting down together, he being one of them, and contributing to it, to a serious analysis of the policies that would work the best for this country at this point in time. When people say that government was looking east, it is not a question of looking east in finance or trade and so on. It's that if you looked at what happened in China at 1980 to the present, it's a situation where reduction of poverty and moving people from the countryside into the cities, into decent jobs and high income, has never been done for as many people in so short period of time. Then there's South Korea, then there is Hong Kong, Singapore, and then the second generation East Asian NICs like Malaysia. We studied, we didn't run there and say we are coming to benchmark. All what was done is in the books. You can sit down and read and find out what the policies are. That is what National Economic and Social Council was doing.
Right.
We got some of the best brains from Singapore. Victor Ko, I remember that man very well. From Malaysia, Dato' Lee Seong. From South Korea. That is the look East kind. How do we move from where we are?
Right.
Given the fact that our population is rising, so that and young people are going to school, so that by the time they get out, you enjoy what you call a demographic dividend.
Right.
A lot of young people coming out of school who are educated, but also invest in industries, agriculture, and the service sector, which will absorb them in decent jobs. And everybody will have high income, it will be inclusive. Our population right now, as you know, is 80% under 35 or thereabout. You educate them and put them on the street, they are internet savvy, and they know TikTok, and Instagram, and X. And if they are not satisfied in their livelihoods, you get what we are at now.
Right.
The intention of the model that the National Economic and Social Council had was to make sure, as you see in Malaysia, or right this minute in Vietnam, the economy is growing so that young people coming into employment get satisfactory and good jobs. That is what they've been asking us here in Kenya the past 2 weeks, and they deserve an answer.
So it's interesting that you've headed there. We are now having what is called the Gen Z revolution.
Yes.
Young people are agitating now. Perhaps louder, they have been agitating. Perhaps it's the work that ELF has been doing to support this youth engagement. But now more than ever on public debate, on unemployment, on debt, and demanding of the government a level of transparency and accountability that we may have missed out. What's your thinking from where you sit, having, being involved in the laying of the bricks for development for the future, and seeing where we have come now? Where did you miss this step?
I think for 10 years of President Mwai Kibaki was moving towards that goal and towards that direction. Let me just mention the idea of free port based on an intensive export processing industries on a duty-free port south of Mombasa.
Right.
It's sort of going there, but the emphasis which was given to it died down. We were supposed to have resort towns, the southern coast, north coast, Isiolo, like Turkana,
right,
and Silicon Savannah in Makueni.
Yes, with the Konza City.
Konza City.
Yes.
And Nairobi ran as a metropolitan area.
Right.
That includes all the burgeoning urbanization in Machakos, in Kiambu, even Murang'a, and Kajiado. Somehow, all of that fell through the cracks. A new regime had new ideas, and they were talking about the four pillars. The four pillars which they had, the Big Four agenda. And in a sense, we've lost direction. We're moving into a completely different. So when the young people are asking for opportunities, I see that being answered more and more in terms of the government doing it. In no country that has developed and answered and provided an answer to young people, when you have a demographic dividend and exploited it, has it been the government doing it? It has been the government facilitating foreign investment, domestic investment, state partnering with the private sector, cooperatives, communities at local level, a mix of those, and considerable access to international markets. Think of producing competitively grow, export-led growth as it was then, as Vietnam is doing now. We had anticipated that path, that tenor, that rhetoric, that voice. We had those experts there. We had somebody from Singapore, I remember Victor Ko, who stayed on even after Kibaki left, trying to impress on us the housing model of all of that was forgotten. It's very sad.